with regard to
Okay, so are you ready to hear something really interesting? This is about robotic lawnmowers and hedgehogs. Oops. Yeah. So I just wanted to start off showing you that this is a project that includes a lot of different people, and I just want to acknowledge the different contributors to this research. O and I are here today, but we have a lot of colleagues on the project as well. So many different logos and universities represented. So we're going to present some papers which have been published. The last two were only published like 1 and 2 weeks ago. So you can access them in the special issue of Animals, which I've mentioned a zillion times now, and feel free to do so. And tomorrow there'll be an international press release about the results, so you're probably going to, I hope you're going to hear a lot about it in the media. So the background for this is that the European hedgehogs live close to humans. And then, again, a variety of human actions seems to be contributing to this decline we see. And one major factor is accidents happening in people's gardens. So hedgehogs getting injured by garden tools, dog attacks, they're caught in netting, they're poisoned, they're drowning in the pools with the steep edges. And injured hedgehogs are, as you know, frequently admitted to rehabilitation centers with different types of cuts and wounds, and some are lethal, so it is a problem. And some of these injuries are consistent with the known risks, such as garden strimmers. We've all heard about them, they've been around for years and years. But a concern has arisen in several of the European countries, especially in mainland Europe, that these increasing number of injuries are caused by robotic lawnmowers. So robotic lawnmowers are getting more and more popular in Europe. They haven't really reached the UK yet, they are coming, but they are really, really popular in Europe. So it's estimated that every 4 gardens in Denmark would have one. So the market is growing rapidly, they're here to stay, we can't do anything about that. But the huge problem is that people find it convenient to let the robotic lawnmowers run during nighttime, because then they can use their garden during daytime and they don't have to trip over a robotic lawnmower. But that's a problem when you have nocturnal animals like hedgehogs roaming the garden as well. And then suddenly, from around 2016, a lot of stories like these started showing up in international media. So we have Danish versions here, Swedish versions, German versions. So basically, eagles are killed by, hedgehogs are killed by robotic lawnmowers. Eagles, that's hedgehogs in German. So nobody had really researched this. This was only hearsay. So I decided it was about time to investigate this properly. And if we could document that the robotic lawnmowers were injuring the hedgehogs, we should, of course, do something about it. So I spent my summer holiday researching this by running over dead hedgehogs with robotic lawnmowers. Nice way to spend the summer. And this publication came out at that back in 2021. And we tested 18 different models of robotic lawnmowers in collision with 70 dead hedgehogs, and they had all died in care. So I basically asked the Danish carers to collect hedgehogs for my research because they had died anyway, so we could make use of the circumstances and help the living. They represented 4 weight classes. It was a total of 216 tests, so each machine was tested 12 times with 4 different dead hedgehogs in 4 weight classes in 3 positions. So these were the weight classes. So we had the dependent juveniles, the independent juveniles, the adults, and then the large adults. Because obviously we assumed that a robotic lawnmower would be more likely to detect a large individual compared to a very small one. And we placed the dead hedgehogs in 3 different positions based on all our knowledge about hedgehog behavior. So I assumed that they would either stand completely still facing the mower, like in a frozen position, in the situation where they decide whether to run away or curl up, or they would curl up and we placed them, with the stomachs facing the mower in a curled up position and the backs facing the mower. I was so clever, I thought, but I'll get back to you on that. So just to give you an impression of the results. So the lighter colors indicate that the hedgehogs weren't harmed, and the black color indicates that the hedgehogs were harmed. And these are the different models of robotic lawnmowers. So just to give you an impression, so some of the robotic lawnmowers were really not harmful, and some completely destroyed the carcasses. We had limbs flying everywhere. We had complete decapitation. It was horrible. It was really, really traumatic for the whole staff, actually, because we didn't know this was going to happen. We assumed that the robotic lawnmowers could detect the hedgehogs like a robotic vacuum cleaner. The vacuum cleaner I have at home, it navigates, between my son's toys and socks and whatever. So I really didn't think it was a problem. So we were really, really shocked about this. So some were harmful, some were not. And the main point was that every robotic lawnmower we tested had to physically interact with the hedgehog in order to detect it. So some would drive up to the hedgehog carcass, give it a light nudge, and then change directions. And you could say that's not very pleasant for a live hedgehog. It might get a bruise, but it wouldn't be, lethal. And then you would have the situation where they were really cut. So we also found that some of the features of the different robotic lawnmowers would increase the safety. So especially the pivoting blades. So if they had blades that could fold underneath a protective frame when hitting something harder than grass, it would be more safe to the hedgehogs. Not all of the pivoting blades were safe though. We found the machines with front-wheel drive were less likely to injure the hedgehogs, and the ones that had skid plates that would protect the knives would also be more safe for the hedgehogs. But we don't really know whether this was due to the fact that the pivoting blades require less motor power. So was it just a matter of machines with pivoting blades being less harmful? But nevertheless, we decided to investigate further, because when we're testing on dead hedgehogs, they can't really curl up properly, and the spines are not raised. So do the test really yield the most realistic results, or is it sort of a worst case scenario? Because if a live hedgehog would curl up, it would tighten its muscles, raise the spines, and these spines may actually cause the pivoting plates to fold inwards, so that they won't hurt the hedgehog, perhaps cut the spines, but not cut into the skin. We wouldn't know. But I also decided we should try and develop a standardized hedgehog safety test, because all the machines that are approved for sale on the European market, they actually have to go through a safety test. So if we could implement a safety test for hedgehogs before they were approved for the market, that would perhaps solve the problem. But how do you create a realistic hedgehog test? Well, you need a crash test dummy of some sort, because obviously they won't use dead hedgehogs at the test facilities. So we had to design a hedgehog crash test dummy. And we also wanted to know how a live hedgehog would react to an approaching mower. So how would we position this crash test dummy to represent reality? Do they run away? Do they curl up? Do they do something completely different? This was what we decided to investigate. Also, would personality influence their reactions? Because everybody who's worked with hedgehogs know that some are really bold and some are really shy. Some tend to take more risks than others. And could this influence the results? So this was something we decided to investigate.
Thank you. And after this, Sophie contacted me, because I'm a veterinarian working with animal experimentation, and I got the license after some discussions with authorities in Denmark, and then we could go further on to investigate how the animals was reacting. And that was the next paper here. We have 50 rehabilitated hedgehogs that was ready for release just after, or a few days after the experiment. We had the animals that was available, so there was 15 adults and 35 independent juveniles, a little more females than males. We was testing them from dusk to dawn in 2 periods in June and in September for 1.5 years ago. The study was divided in 2 parts, where first the animals was put in a combination novel arena, novel object test to investigate if they were shy or they were spoiled, as Sophia said. And after that, the hedgehog was included in 2 encounter tests, measuring the reaction of each individuals toward the meeting of a machine, a robotic lawn mower. Of course, it will not hurt the animals, but we'll come back to that. Here you can see the timeline where the animals was first, the hedgehogs was first tested for their personalities. That took half an hour, and then half an hour of rest. And then we was performing the meeting with the machines. So in total it was a little more than 1 hour for each animal. And after that the hedgehog was very fine. The shyness bonus test, that was a novel arena. Hedgehogs was placed in its own next box in the arena, and it was leave there for 15 minutes to rest with the entrance blocked. After that we was opening up, and then the hedgehog could go out or it could stay in the box, what it preferred. There was a novel object. That was a chameleon teddy bear playing a calm tune and blinking with different colored lights. So if it was bold, it could go out, or if it was shy, it could stay at home. And it was tested for 15 minutes duration, and if it was being in the box, it was classified as bold, shy, but if it goes out, it was classified as bold. Here you can see one of the very bold animals. This hedgehog, maybe you can hear. It was taped from all with different cameras, so no people had to go and look at the animals and disturb them. Very interested. And Sophia took this because this have a very special behavior. It was actually attacking our teddy bear. You will see that. As you can see, a very bold one. The shyness boldness test was based on the behavior of the animals. We found that a little more than half, 27 individuals was shy. They were staying in the next box, while the one I show you and 22 others, they were bold. They was entering the arena. We performed statistics and found that there was no effects of neither the sex or the weight, and therefore also not the age of the animal. So the personality was not depending on the age and also not on the sex of the animal. Then we go further on, wait half an hour, and perform the test where it meets robotic mover. We were taking care of that no animals was hurt here, absolutely. We were using a disarmed robotic lawn mover, of course, with the knives to remove it. We stopped it, it could be stopped via an app and half meter in front of the hedgehog. It would never be closer than half a meter to the animal. We could also be stopped by pulling a rope attached to the mover, and in the other end of the rope, a very strong man was placed, and it was not me. It could also be stopped manually, pushing the stop button. That was the job for me as a veterinarian. And there also the hedgehog care, that was daughter. She was just standing behind the animal, and she could also take the animal if something goes wrong. But everything was fine with each hedgehog. Here you can see it. I was standing here, pushing the button if something should go wrong. The encounter test was divided in two, where we tested with light on and with light off. Not necessarily always with the light on, but we switched so some of the animals with the light on first and some with the light off first. And we tested all the animals, and as we was testing them twice, with light on and light off, it was 100 tests we performed. That was what we have our license for. Here you can see the results. We divided it so that the animal's reaction, that could be either that it was neutral, that it was standing in the same position as it was put in when we started. But it could also be more bold. That was what we call here 1, 2, and 3. And you can see down here, it was an upright position, but they could look to the one or the other side, or they could turn the in the opposite direction. It could also be more shy. That could be that they tried to run away, or it was curling up. And actually, there was only one animal that was curling up once. So what Sophie was expecting was not true, and that's therefore you also have sometimes to perform animal studies to get the right results. We're performing statistic. I will not go in detail about that, but what we found was that there was only effect of the weight and therefore the age of the animals, and also the number it was tested. So its reaction was depending on that. But for instance, not if it was male or females, or if it was bold or shy in the personality test. So we looked at these data, and you can see here the juveniles and the adults. The juveniles was a little more bold here, maybe because they was not so experienced. They have not met this terrible machine before, because it was young and naive. Maybe. We don't know, but that's a way to, that's a possibility. The other thing was here, the first and the second time it meets in this robot mover, lawn mover, and as you can see, it was reacting more bold in the first time than in the second time. And maybe again, it's because now it had already met this machine before, and it was not so bold anymore. And then I will give it to you.
Okay, so we basically learned that the adults were more shy towards the robotic lawnmowers. We don't know what the adults had experienced in their lives before they went into care, so we don't know whether they had actually met a robotic lawnmower in their lives before. And we learned that the individuals would behave in a shyer manner the second time they met a robotic lawnmower. And this is, of course, important because it could indicate that if a hedgehog survives its first encounter with a robotic lawnmower out there, it's more likely to survive in the future if it meets a robotic lawnmower because it would tend to avoid it. So the more hedgehog-friendly robotic lawnmowers we get out there, the less likely the hedgehogs are to be killed by them. So important knowledge gained there. So we used all this information to design a hedgehog safety test. So we basically got hands on a lot of dead hedgehogs again, and we tested 19 different models of robotic lawnmowers with dead hedgehogs. And we chose the size of an independent juvenile because we saw from the first tests back in 2020 that this was where the interesting things started to happen. So the adults were more likely to be detected by the robotic lawnmowers, and the very small juveniles were not detected at all because they were too small, but they were not hurt because they went underneath the knives. So the independent juveniles were actually the most interesting size to test. So we discovered that the position of these hedgehogs, so we tested in all the positions we saw from the tests on live hedgehogs, but we found that position did not affect the risk of injury when we did the test on the dead hedgehogs. We also discovered that 50 tests are needed to rule out the variation and insecurity about the results. So if the robotic lawnmower hit the hedgehog in like a 53% angle instead of 53 degrees angle instead of 45 degrees or whatever, would that have caused a difference in the results? But we used statistics to calculate that 50 tests would be enough to really validate the results. So we found that the size of the dead hedgehog influenced the risk of injury, especially the height. And we also discovered that the crash test dummy really needs improvement. So I just want to show you what a crash test dummy looks like. It took a lot of effort to design it, and Dorte and I have been working very hard to do that in collaboration with the engineers at Husqvarna. So I'm just going to pass it around so you can feel it. So we really wanted to make it as realistic as possible. But we also wanted to make a crash test dummy that could be 3D printed and used by all the manufacturers in the development of the robotic lawnmowers. So, based on all these different results, we designed a standardized hedgehog safety test, which we published in the third publication mentioned. And now the next step is to have this safety test implemented in this official test protocol, which is used to provide certification for hedgehog-friendly robotic lawnmowers. And if this is implemented, we are hoping that this would actually be used to make sort of a labeling system to guide the consumers. So if the hedgehog safety test is passed, the manufacturers would be allowed to put like a hedgehog-friendly stamp on their product. So basically, we recommended 2 test setups with an adult crash test dummy size and an independent juvenile crash test dummy size, running 60 tests each in 3 different positions. So the next steps would be to collaborate with the manufacturers to develop these hedgehog-friendly robotic lawnmowers. And I will tell you that my current research, this project, is being funded by Stihl and Husqvarna, the major manufacturers of robotic lawnmowers. They put a lot of funding into this because they are genuinely interested in improving this. And as soon as we provided the results and the safety test, they started working in their labs. So this is actually going to happen. And we want to improve the crash test dummy, so it yields the exact same results as with the dead hedgehogs, because during the test we tested the dummy and the dead hedgehogs, and the outcomes were not identical. So it takes a bit more work. But we are also hoping to establish this labeling system for the hedgehog-friendly robotic lawnmowers. So hopefully we'll get there in the future. Implementing the safety test is going to take a few years because it's a very bureaucratic process, but we're working on that, and I think it's achievable. But the recommendations for now are still to restrict the running of the machines to daylight hours, and of course to check for any active hedgehogs or other vulnerable wildlife species that could be injured by a robotic lawnmower. Because even though we're encouraging the design of hedgehog-friendly mowers, the less hedgehog-friendly mowers are still going to be out there for years. So yes, that's just how it is. So the published papers can be downloaded from the special issue. And we would like to acknowledge the different animal rescues that provided the dead hedgehogs for us. So that's Dyrenes Beskyttelse, Pindsvinevennerne i Danmark, and Pindsvineplejerne. And all the organizations are actually represented at this conference. So thank you so much for helping us with this. And originally, the British Hedgehog Preservation Society funded the research. Now Stiel and Husqvarna has taken over, and the Carlsberg Foundation. So thank you so much for your attention, and you can follow the research if you want to.
Thank you both. It's really cool to hear about such an important topic. I did want to ask, actually, do you have, or does anyone have any sort of idea or understanding of the rate of casualties that lawnmowers cause in the wild, so to speak? Because I don't.
I'm really happy you asked that question, because again, that's when the database is really, really important. Because when you start typing in the occurrence of robotic lawnmower injuries, we'll get an impression about this, because we basically have no idea.